Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, and sharing minutes is not permitted. Speakers are to direct all comments to the City Council, not the audience or any one individual council member. Discussion between speakers and members of the audience is not permitted. When there are multiple individuals who wish to speak, please try not to reiterate lengthy comments made by others to ensure an effective and efficient meeting. This ensures everyone has an opportunity to speak. Audience and speakers will be courteous in their language and presentation. No applause, sidebar conversations, or booing before, during, or after any speakers. Please refrain from talking in the audience during the meeting. If you have supporting documents that are being displayed during the meeting, you must provide copies to the city clerk, and those will become part of the permanent record. The citizens' comments portion of the meeting is not intended to be a question and answer session. This is for citizen comments only. Council members should refrain from answering questions or debating issues with members of the public. And with that, we will allow anyone who wishes to come to the podium to speak to the council on any matter. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Michael Hirsch. I live in Seminole Lakes. I'm here to talk about your essentially repeal of the egregious unconstitutional sign ordinance. It's a little comfort to stand here and say, I told you so. I'm really here to say, now what are you going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Most of you voted and passed a sign ordinance that was blatantly unconstitutional. You should have known it. The only supporting document I could have brought with me is the Bill of Rights, and that could be displayed up there too. You should have known it. Your city manager certainly should have known it. And I'm sure your city attorney knew it. The problem was nobody stood up and said to the council members, you can't do this, it's unconstitutional. So what you essentially did is passed an ordinance that has cost me and everybody else in this room probably upwards of $150,000 to maybe $200,000, maybe more. We need an accounting of what it's cost in not only out-of-pocket costs for attorneys, court fees, police overtime, and enforcing this egregious act. I've been a journalist all my life. I've been in radio and television in the past 20-some years as an author. My livelihood depends on the First Amendment. You people didn't just bump it. You ran it over, backed up and ran it over again. It was a Kyle Schwarber 492-foot out of the park, no doubt. The question is, what are you going to do to keep from doing that again? I need you to say that you will empower your city attorney not to be in fear for his job, same for your city manager, but to stand up in public at a city council meeting and say, don't do that. It will cost the citizens of this city a lot of money. It's blatantly unconstitutional. It will embarrass Punta Gorda nationwide. You can't just sit there and vote for it and ho-hum and walk around and say, well, we had to do it because people were asking us to do it. Mr. Levin and our city manager, you need to stand up and say, don't do that. And the city council needs to empower them to do that and know that they won't be held in fear of their jobs if they actually do that. The First Amendment is just about as important, more important than anything we could possibly be dealing with. You need to respect it.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
Hi. I'd like to say...
Your name, please?
Oh, my name is Jeff Lustig, and I'd like to thank Mr. Cummings' service on the City Council. He's always been accessible. The work that he did to push forward the codes, for the building codes, and to make us into the 21st century was really very helpful, and it's not unnoticed. He was always available to talk to and discuss things. On another note, I worked for 40 years in New York City, and there was a thing called the Small Claims Court that you, as a small business owner, was terrified to go into. You knew you were always going to lose when you went up there. But it allowed people to have the redress so that they feel that they were being taken care of. It made the business owner more amenable to settling any kind of conflicts. The reason why I say that is it's the difference between theory and reality. In theory, I'm correct that the person didn't have a right to this merchandise or whatever, but in reality, you're going to lose and you're going to have to pay this money. The same is true with some of our ordinances, and what I'm concerned about is the ordinance of 15-48E, the recording of city workers. The recording is dependent on the city employee if he wants to or not to be recorded. And therefore, if the employee feels good about the recording, or that he's on the side of the individual who's making the recording, he will allow that for public view. But if he's not, he won't allow that, and therefore you won't have the same time, place, and manner problems that you had with the other ordinance. The other thing is that there's a disconnect between patrol officers' body cams and Marcy's law. And you need to address, the police can't delete those kinds of images or redact those. It's part of the city council or the people who work in government to do that. And so you need to look at how you can get those two things in order so that people's information are protected in public. And again, thank you very much, and thank you for repealing the sections on that ordinance. That was very important to me, and I hope that we can avoid frivolous lawsuits in the future by being proactive and have the city attorney look at these things to see what potentially we can be sued for. Whoever thought that Roe v. Wade would be overturned, whoever thought that affirmative action was going to be overturned. It requires us to look at all of our ordinances again to see what our liability is. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Louis LaBarbera, and to speak on the unconstitutional sign ordinance, how are we going to keep that from happening again, and what are we going to do for the people that were negatively impacted? For example, Andrew Sheets, who was fined up to $5,000 due to this unconstitutional ordinance, and a lien was put onto his house. He lost business, and his name was defamed multiple times. What are we going to do to keep that from happening again? It has been brought to multiple people's attention that it was blatantly unconstitutional, whether it's to the council, to the police, and nobody did anything about it until Andrew Sheets took it to court. We had plenty of case law, for example, Cohen v. California, when it was said that one man's lyric is Thank you. It's free speech. That's my supporting document, would be the Constitution of the United States of America, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. What is in that ordinance had nothing to do with fighting words. It had nothing to do with inciting violence. It was blatantly unconstitutional freedom of speech. What are you going to do to keep it from happening again? That's what the people need to know. Because remember, you all took an oath and the police took an oath to serve the people. You need to let the people know how you're going to keep this unconstitutionalities from happening again to where it affects the people, especially someone like Andrew Sheets. He won his state trial, and his federal case is about to be settled. And he was even arrested for free speech on public property. How are you going to keep that from happening again? Oh, they cut the feed.
Martha Russell Beretta.
They cut the live stream.
Morning, my name is Dave Kalin. Here to speak on item 8D, which references the sign ordinance. I'd like to start by thanking you for giving the time to speak. Many of you, as elected officials, have taken the oath of office, which is to defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That is the first role of government, is to protect the people under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. When we look at the sign ordinance and what it has created over the past duration of its enactment, has been just nothing short of shameful. As we move forward, I would encourage each one of you to consider this very carefully, because just 54 short years ago, a black Baptist pastor was assassinated for his political views in free speech. Speech that is now accepted and cherished in our heritage as Americans and African Americans, that we are all equal. Wasn't so just 60 years ago. So I would encourage every one of you to seriously consider, as you move forward with this sign ordinance and what it has done to our community, the divisiveness of it, and let's work to pull ourselves together and not divide. Thank you.
Nicole Christian, Port Charlotte. How many citations were given out for sign ordinance violations since certain language was codified as forbidden? Do any of you know?
This is not Q&A.
It's not Q&A. All right. I wonder how many people were jailed as a result of it. On July 27, 2021, the board was advised via email about the necessity of respecting and protecting Americans' right to protest and free speech. What changed your minds to jail people after that? For signs, for political expression in a public forum. I wonder how many on the board have never used the F-bomb in their lives. I know last year one of your members admitted to using it in golf, a game. Why is it okay to use it to play golf, but it's not okay to use it when you're expressing deeply held political beliefs? I wonder why we're forbidding the use of words when the next step would be to use weapons of war. If you can't have a civil discourse, as Thomas Jefferson warned us, if truth is not able to be combated in a public forum, then it leads people to violence. I want to go on record as saying that I think it's a crime to limit the number of political signs that Punta Gorda Americans can put in their own yards to support candidates that they believe in. Thank you for the time.
My name is James McGlinnis, and I'm here to speak about sign ordinance, of course. I personally, and millions of other people just like me, consider the First Amendment and the United States Constitution to be the most important thing that separates our country from everybody else. Putin's locking people up right now for protesting the war. He's got a big disinformation campaign. If you try and tell the truth, you get put in jail. And a lot of people look at that and they say, that's terrible, that's terrible. But this city council is doing the exact same thing. You're not like the Wizard of Oz, you're not little Putians, you're little Putins. You have to understand that one of the things that makes this country great is the ability to say what we want to say, when we want to say it, any way we want to say it. And people like you do not have the right to tell us we can't. The Constitution guarantees that. And you worry about you wonder how you got into this big mess. This big mess started several years ago when people started protesting your police that were overly abusive and heavy-handed in what they were doing, and in a lot of ways very corrupt. And people started monitoring that, following that, videotaping them, and seeking public records. When they came to seek public records, you guys all played this Title 10, Chapter 119, violate their rights by making them pay exorbitant fees for every single record. Every single thing needed to be redacted when it didn't. You withheld records intentionally from these people requesting records. And then, in order for them to enforce the law, Title 10, Chapter 119, they have to sue you. But in order to sue you, they have to prove that you did not give them the records they asked for. And to do that, they needed to videotape asking for the records. So what did you do then? You made it a crime to videotape inside public building. You told people coming to pick up the records that you can't videotape you asking for the records, which is a violation of Title 10, Chapter 119. It's a crime. You can't put a condition on the release of public records, and you did that. And when that wasn't enough, these people got angry and they went out and started protesting. You created the Ian McGuires and the Andrew Sheets of the world by trying to suppress people's rights. And every time you try and do that, it's going to get worse and worse and worse for you. You are going to be sued many more times than this. You're going to cost all these people hundreds of thousands of dollars by your own arrogance. And your attorney, Levine, he sat before you in these meetings and he lied to you. And he told you that Cohen versus California supported it when any idiot could see that that lawsuit was about what you could say on the radio, not what you could say on a public sidewalk. He led you down that dark path because that's what you wanted to hear. The first thing that you should do to straighten out this mess is fire him, because he lied to you. And then after he lied to you, he told you he could support this in court. And then he took all the taxpayers' money to go fight it. And now you're where you are today, and he's still supporting it. You've gotten bad advice from a bad attorney, and you need to do something about that. But the bottom line is, the more you try and squeeze First Amendment, the more it's going to blow up in your face. You don't realize that yet, but what I want to just say, last closing argument, to all of you, and especially to you, Mr. Karski, the I won't back down, fuck you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council before we move on? Last call. If you've spoken once, you cannot speak a second time. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and speak?
Also, why was the live feed cut when that man talked about the sign ordinance?
Out of order, sir.
Then they turn on the live feed. Don't repress people's opinions. You're corrupt and you will be sued multiple times. Oh, I just called them out for cutting off the live feed. They cut off the live feed when the first guy talked about it.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So I just called them out for it. Oh, you're out of line. Then don't cut the live feed. But that was beautiful.
James,
Lewis,
that was good.
that was awesome. I'm sorry, I stuttered too much, but first time doing that type of things.
One man's person, another man's lyric, that was me.
Thank you. Yeah, I stuttered like that. Was my first time ever doing something like that. So.
It's easy. I've spoken in front of these kind of people, and their arrogance.
The sad part is it falls on the deaf ears because they have the hair up on their back that it's their way or the highway.
Right.
And we're fighting the machine because they're not the only ones.
Right.
Well, what disturbed me going through this process is Ian McGuire was the first one.
Yes.
And Ian pushed and pushed, and he fought and fought. And I tried to get people to understand that you don't understand. He's fighting for everybody.